Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I got a full house. Welcome back, Mac,
Good evening.
and of course, Gio.
What is good, guys?
On today's podcast, we'll be going over the action from the Premier League, and of course, what everyone else is excited for. We're going to also preview the upcoming semifinal Champions League matchups. Before we get into it, though, don't forget to follow us on our social medias. Both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's dive straight into the match of the weekend. Newcastle 0, Arsenal 2. This game, Mac, was a game that I very, very much enjoyed as a neutral. Did not want it to end at all. Back and forth action all over the pitch. What was your take on this game, Mac?
This was an absolutely standing watch. I do agree on any neutral's perspective. You kind of got everything you wanted out of this game. There was high intensity, physical action, both different teams having a complete contrasting styles that they're trying to implement and dominate and kind of thrust their ideology and philosophies into the game, and at certain points were successful in doing so. Overall, you would say that it was almost a fair result in some ways, where Arsenal on the odds of play slightly edged it, so the 2-0 win seemed fair, but Newcastle did have their chances, including hitting the post very early on, a penalty shout, which I thought was correctly overruled by VAR, which we may talk about later. But overall, I thought it was a great game, a great performance for both teams, but more importantly, to focus on the Arsenal perspective, a very, very important way and a statement for them to be able to turn around and don't let the slide continue to occur. I understand they did win against Chelsea, but pretty much everyone wins against Chelsea, so I don't think we're going to take that much from that result. Against a Newcastle team that's playing well at peak performance right now, to come and win away after what happened last season in terms of them dropping out of the top four, because of that Newcastle result, to come back at St. James's Park and pull out performance like this, absolutely outstanding, and we're definitely excited to talk further about this game.
Yeah, like you said, a great statement win for Arsenal. A lot of questions about would they be able to do it away, like you mentioned, at a place like Newcastle, physically imposing team, and this is sort of it's not Arteta's first year, but I think he's still sort of getting his team used to, going full length of the season. And hey, they really came up with a great performance altogether. It looked like very, very well sort of in possession. We all know what Arsenal can do, but it looked like for this game, out of possession, Arsenal stuck to the game plan very, very well. Gio as well. Even though they did have some changes to that team, Jorginho did start in midfield along Xhaka and Odegaard, and Kier at the back starting instead of Holding, and obviously William Saliba out for this game as well. But Gio, what were your takes on this game?
To be fair, to anybody who watched the game or didn't watch the game and just looked at the scoreline, the scoreline didn't depict how decent or well Newcastle actually played. They got their fair amount of chances. Again, early on, Callum Wilson off the post. Joe Willock had his fair amount of chances as well in front of goal. But look, again, it's another one of those stories where you let a great team off the hook. And look what they did just a couple of minutes after, when Saka plays the ball to Odegaard, and Odegaard, obviously not a stranger to shoot from outside the box, has a go and places it perfectly where the keeper can't get it. Again, I thought Newcastle, I thought they're just I thought their idea was good. I think a couple players from Newcastle were a little poor in my eyes. I think we both agree, Ray, is that Kieran Trippier didn't have his best game in terms of his ball delivery. I thought he could have had a much better game. One thing in particular I want to point out in terms of Newcastle's game plan, I've just felt like they were trying to almost mimic Arsenal's game and try to do too neat of a pass in the middle, try to play through the seams a little too much. They should have took advantage of, their pace and their physicality and their size of team and took it against them. Play a little bit on the counter, see where it gets you. But I think they were playing, trying to play a too technical of a game when they could have used their athleticism against Arsenal to their advantage, and I think they let that slip a little.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely a great point. Just wanted to go back as well to a player, Gio, we mentioned last week, Odegaard opening the scoring, 5 goals in 5 games for Arsenal, really hitting form right when sort of Arsenal, had a couple of games where they didn't get a win, but when you needed it, he's there now. And also, of course, the goal scorer, Martinelli, had a great role in that sort of outlet, being Arsenal's outlet whenever Newcastle were very, very we're pressuring a lot higher in the pitch. So I guess, Mac, how good is it that Arsenal are able to sort of rotate those goals and not rely on just someone like a main striker? Obviously, the one that comes to mind is Man City with Erling Haaland. But you have different players. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Martinelli and Odegaard are tied for the top scorers for Arsenal this season, which is
yes.
Right, which is not something you see as often. What are your thoughts about that, Mac?
Overall, I think it's important, and it poses a great problem in some ways that Arteta has going forward, where you're looking at potentially at next season, and even for the rest of the season. But he really kind of has the pick of a litter of who he wants to play where. Nketiah is coming back, and while Jesus was out, he was playing phenomenal. So if he's playing back as a rotation piece, that could be very good. Trossard in the previous matchup against Chelsea looked excellent. So you're able to kind of rotate pieces in and out as you see fit, depending on the matchup, depending on form, and still kind of expect to get goals from multiple different positions. It's not just relying on kind of one player to bring them in. So it definitely shows more of a cohesive attack from Arsenal. And I think you have to give them a lot of credit in terms of this game, because they were possessed by Newcastle, having 55% possession. Newcastle did. But Arsenal still kept to their philosophies of how they wanted to be able to build up from the back. And the positioning of Odegaard was absolutely key, because Newcastle, I was taking a look at the stat, and I thought it was very interesting how they've changed how they play under Eddie Howe. They actually play with the least amount of time of the ball actually on the pitch. What they do is they take as long as they want for goal kicks, they take as long as they want for free kicks, throw-ins, because they're trying to get their players rest. So as soon as the ball comes in, they're able to consistently press and keep those sprints active to be able to make sure as soon as the opposing team has the ball at the back, all three attackers are able to immediately press the ball, and everyone in midfield is literally on a man-to-man job to be able to make sure no one could kind of pass through them. But Arsenal, even though sometimes they did slip up and they weren't able to keep as comprehensive a possession as maybe they would want, they stuck to the game plan. And Odegaard finding those pockets in behind Bruno Guimaraes was absolutely key in terms of having the good outlet, where if Zinchenko is tucking into the midfield role, there is that extra layer of a shorter pass to be able to help break the line. So Odegaard is key in that position, just in the terms of Arsenal's build-up. But also, if he's getting goals like this amount of goals highly per season, it just adds more versatility all throughout the pitch and different areas that Arsenal could potentially exploit against different types of teams. And I think this versatility is key to Arteta's philosophy and how successful they have been. But also, like I said, give credit to Newcastle, because you could argue their game plan worked. What they want to do, they were able to do. They just couldn't, unfortunately, kind of get that final piece, that final action, that final delivery, as you both pointed out, to get them across the goal line. And of course, even when they did have those few opportunities, Ramsdale was there.
Exactly. A game for both keepers. Obviously, I'm referencing the save by Nick Pope right before the halftime, Gio, where Odegaard hits it with his weak foot, point blank save by Nick Pope. And then right after the second half, the free header from Shar that Ramsdale keeps out. And huge game for these keepers, adds all to the excitement for these games. But yeah, overall, Newcastle, like you said, not a poor game, just couldn't really get the result and the goals when they were needed. They did make some changes. I noticed, obviously, ASM, who sort of someone that we wanted, I think, to see more of in this game, came on quite late by the time that they were down 2-0. Would you have changed anything sort of with this starting lineup, Gio, for Newcastle yourself, given the fact, Almiron also came on late, but throughout the season, especially at the beginning of the season, he was a big threat? What are your thoughts?
I think no, I think this was the right lineup. I think through through the stretch of games where Newcastle have been banging in goals left, right, and center. You kind of owe it to these guys who got you here to get the start. Matchup wise, I thought it was fair. I think it was very fair. They matched up well, player for player. Um, you know, so yeah, I don't see anything wrong with this lineup. Obviously, could they have made changes a little earlier or maybe at the half? Possibly. Yeah, I think the extra little bit of physicality, say an ASM does bring, would have helped. But again, giving these guys a shot just to bring it back again. This game was very fine margins at the start, and so if they had put one away early like Callum Wilson, we probably wouldn't even be having these questions. So no, I think it was fair to start these guys.
That's exactly right. And I know we want to sort of look at big picture, but I just wanted to say before we move on from that as well, Mac, and you Lego there. This is a great game to sort of see, obviously not just this season. These two teams, I think we can all agree, are not sort of their final form and will only get better. Two very bright young coaches. If they're able to get the guys that they want next season. The build up play for Newcastle, as you pointed out, Gio, was good, but lacked a little bit going forward. You only expect them to get better, so they'll be an exciting team going forward. And then Arsenal, likewise. Beyond the season, of course, they're going to be looking to build out and compete for the title next season. Obviously, this season still, but also going into the next season with Champions League football. So very excited overall because these two teams are, I think, teams to watch for the next season. But Mac, you had a thought as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say in regards to Newcastle, we definitely agree in terms of they've been on a strong run of form in terms of, I guess, consistently they look to be nailed in that third spot, which is well above kind of schedule in terms of where they're supposed to have been. But this last run of form, I think it's starting to, their questions, or less so now we're asking offensively is can they score, is defensively they kind of eked out and kind of given up one to make the other work well. Because in regards to their last 7 Premier League games, they haven't kept a clean sheet and have conceded 10 goals in that run. And to their previous time they scored the last 10 goals was a total of 18 games. So just the separation of the last 7 to 8 previous to those 18 games, you see the disparity and difference in terms of the goals allowed. And I think that's been the key difference is where they're trying to, on that press, they're trying to be more aggressive. They're trying to bring their players up the pitch further to see if they can win the ball back in the final third to create more opportunities. But unfortunately, it's caused a little bit more of mistakes at the back. And that's negatively impacted them in a couple of key games, of course, against this Arsenal game and as well as the Aston Villa 3-0 loss, which you would say at the beginning of the season, in all likelihood, they would have probably gone into those games and been happy with the 0-0. They're trying to take that next evolutionary step in a way where, okay, we want to be that more expensive. We want to be able to be more pressing. We want to be able to get in there more and stick in. But are they going to create enough goals to kind of survive those, I guess, perceptive lapses defensively? They're not there yet, but you can see the thought process in their evolution.
Yeah, very excited to see sort of how they finish the season because still, and we're going to talk about this now, they are, with that loss, a little bit closer to sort of that, well, still in that conversation for top 4 finishes. They do have a favorable run-in toward the end of the season facing Leeds, Leicester, and Chelsea at this point. So games that you sort of expect them to win, but we'll see if they do change it up and go more offensive and try to get on the front foot rather than be more defensively sound the way they've been all season. But speaking on that, Gio, the next thing we're going to cover now is West Ham 1, Man U 0. Another 1-0 away defeat for Man U, and all coming at the wrong time, Gio. Obviously, still battling for that top 4 position. What are your takes on this game?
Yeah, no, I think this is classic Man United of the past 5 years in the worst way possible. I think once the offense does get stagnant, it shows how stagnant it can get, and it just also goes to show how badly they are, yearning for a elite midfielder in there, or a couple of higher level midfielders in there that can really, kind of turn the game on a swivel and really help this team and really find those seams for those for the front three guys, and it's clear that that the ones that are there right now, they had a good run, but aren't necessarily it, and Rashford, again, as great of a season he has had, has been struggling mightily. So yeah, I think it just shows the level. Yes, it if they fall out of top four, yeah, I don't know how successful the season would be, but in terms of the progress they have made, yes, great, but it still shows the leaps and bounds that the elite teams have over Man United. But again, almost quite evenly matched. I don't think West Ham created, significantly better chances, and we were kind of on our toes that like every time, West Ham got the ball, we were kind of worried about, how they were going to score. Again, they scored off a very, fortunate mistake on De Gea's end. But yeah, it's coming to the point where it's far too common, it's happening too often, and this conversation comes up far too much in terms of, De Gea causing, or putting them down in the game.
Okay, well, Gio, I'm sorry you're going to have to hear this, but Mac, let's have that conversation. Obviously, not a lot that West Ham created up until that goal. From the highlights that I watched, it was all Man U. It looked like they were going to get on the front foot and score early on into the game with a host of chances, but hey, that's what happens, and it really brings me back to, I know it's still far-fetched, and we'll cover it later, but that De Gea mistake is like that Alisson header against West Brom, where it helped Liverpool actually get still the top four. These moments are pivotal, and it was a huge mistake. Mac, what were your takes on that?
So I have a couple things here that I want to be able to make sure I hit. Firstly, you could argue, yes, De Gea is the reason why that Manchester United lost the game because of that mistake. But he's also not the reason why Manchester United didn't win the game, because Manchester United did not play well enough offensively. Expected goals of only 1.2. They created a lot of opportunities, but all of them were very poor chances. They weren't able to break down a defensive line. West Ham played very, very well in terms of, let's say, argue their back nine outside of Antonio playing up top. Everybody understood their job. Everyone understood their role. And Manchester United just couldn't find the seams. And I would argue a lot of that has to come from players like Weghorst or Bruno Fernandes, kind of those players that are supposed to be, Weghorst, if he's playing kind of as a 10 in some positions where Rashford is supposed to be running in behind, theoretically, or Bruno Fernandes when he's playing as a 10, he's supposed to be able to be the player in the hole, in the gap, trying to find the spaces in between the lines. But most of the time, he was trying to pick up the ball late, see if he can be able to kind of pitch balls to either side and hope for a cross in to Rashford, which is probably not the greatest strength of him. So playing against a team that is defensively sound, is comfortable not having the ball like West Ham are, or it's kind of like the Achilles heels to this Manchester United team because how poorly they are able to break teams down. On top of that, arguably the best midfielder, I know both of you, this may grind your gears, on the pitch was Declan Rice, by far. He was better than everybody else on that pitch. I see your face, Gio. It's true. Offensively, he did much more than the rest of them combined as well. And majority of the time, he didn't have possession of the ball. So it really goes to show Manchester United, against a team that understands their role and that is difficult to break down, they're going to struggle. So a lot of the fingers are going to be pointed at De Gea, and fairly so, in terms of that mistake. But he's not the reason why they didn't win. They didn't win because they still don't have an attacking philosophy against teams that are just going to be comfortable out of possession. And the only way that they've really scored a lot of goals is on the break, on against counters, against teams that want to play on the front foot. This West Ham team are definitely not them. So it goes to asking a whole lot of questions, and I know we made this is definitely probably better our conversation in the off season, but okay, if the idea is to replace De Gea, then you're looking to be able to getting at a different keeper that's really good with feet. How much money does that cost? Does that timeline make sense with everybody else? As well as bringing the whole Kane discussion. There's so many variables, and I was listening to a couple of videos and ideas of how Manchester United should focus their transfer seasons going forward. But they have even though they've done well to maintain being in the top four, and the season finished today, this is a huge success for the club. But the season's not over yet. There's still things that could slip up. And instead of being perceived as a success, it's going to, theoretically, if things kind of shape out and they drop out of the top four and potentially don't win the FA Cup, this is now a disastrous season for Manchester United in some way. So they still have a lot to play for. They need to lock in for these last couple of games because they're ever important to the future of this club.
For sure. Wolves, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Fulham to come before the FA Cup final against Man City. Gio, I'm going to be honest, as a Liverpool fan, obviously we want all the drama, and even any neutrals, we want all the drama. But from here, this point on, it's very unlikely that Man U, I think, will lose those 3 games at home that they do have. The only game away that they have is against Bournemouth. They have been great at home all season. And Ten Hag, after they had the loss, I think, at Brighton earlier this season, he had the players come in and refocus. I think something similar is going to happen in this after this defeat. And like I mentioned, it's going to be now a week between games for most of them, and so a lot more time to rest, key players coming back and sort of regrouping. What are your thoughts on sort of Man U's approach towards the end of the season?
Look, again, Brighton was a tougher matchup, but I think games coming up, I think very very winnable. Granted, all these teams are still scrapping for, jockeying for position. So it's not an easy walk in the park by any means, but I think at home, especially where they have succeeded succeeded a lot this season, and on the road, like the numbers kind of speak for themselves. So, am I confident? I wouldn't say I'm completely confident, but do I have belief that they will close out and kind of squeeze their way into the Champions League and kind of worry about the issues during the summer? Yeah, I do believe so. I think Liverpool still have a lot on their plate, and they're gonna have to kind of lock in as well, even if they want a chance to squeeze into the top 4 as well.
Yeah, Liverpool have Leicester away and Southampton away. Their only home game will be Aston Villa, so not on paper still winnable games, but you never know if you're away from home, and with the way Liverpool have been all season, what could happen here. So definitely something to keep an eye out on. I guess, Mac, lastly, your thoughts on sort of this run-in for the top 4. Is this chaotic? Exactly what our fans want to see and expect to happen sort of every year, or you think it's too much? It's too much for everyone's hearts.
It's definitely not too much. This is why football is a fascinating sport, where there's always going to be teams and results like this where the unexpected could very well happen. And there's moments where, even though things look all but certain, kind of things slip out, where even though we're probably going to talk about like Man City in all likelihood have secured the Premier League title, I would say that's just as likely as Manchester United in some ways have secured top 4. But there's always a chance, and it's the hope that kills you, and that's what keeps us coming back for more, right? So it is how it is. I do think, though, we're actually spot on, and I think this is probably the key takeaway, and at least to calm the nerves of any anxious Manchester United fans, is that in those 3 games at home, I would argue to say those are probably 9 points in the bag for Manchester United, considering how well they played, because their last 8 defeats in the Premier League have all come away from home. So as long as they've been at Old Trafford, they've been fairly comfortable. So I think that should continue, and that should put them in a position where they should feel comfortable enough to get across the finish line. Will that happen? Who knows? And that's why we love football.
I guess just to end off this part of the podcast, what I guess, Gio, you and I can sort of bond over is the fact that Brighton, Villa, and Spurs over the last week have had negative results as well. So it's sort of creating that distance, which we'll touch on Brighton, I think, a little bit after. But that at least gives us a little bit more peace of mind. But guys, on that note, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we'll be back covering some more action from the weekend. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now, discussing more action from this weekend, and also at the time of recording, today, Monday, football action. But firstly, Chelsea fans, welcome back to House of Footy. I know that you guys have been away for a little bit, but it's your time to shine again. Chelsea finally get a win away at Bournemouth, 3-1, scoring 3 goals, Gio, in a fashion where they're balling out now, it looks like. But no, this is a game, I think, Gio, where it was going to be always a 50-50, see who gets the lucky bounce, or who has an individual piece of magic that will sort of open the game up. None other than Conor Gallagher, who gets the header very early on in the game. And on that note, the new Mason Mount maybe, because Mason Mount hasn't been seen for Chelsea and it's all Conor Gallagher. But hey, credits to Conor Gallagher for getting that goal. Then Bournemouth are able to tie it up through a build-up play straight down the middle of that Chelsea spine, which again gives me questions about sort of how Lampard is set up defensively. We saw a lot of defensive mistakes against, albeit a very good Arsenal team with build-up, but a worrying sign. But hey, there's nothing to worry about, Gio, as Chelsea did score 2 goals in the second half to secure the win. What are your takes on this game, Gio?
As nice it is, well, I don't know how nice it is, but as nice it is to see Chelsea finally get a win and do something with a team of that stature. It's cool, but I think Bournemouth's defense kind of bailed them out a little. I think their defense was quite poor, especially on their goals. For a player like Conor Gallagher to kind of get in between 2 guys and score a header on that first one, poor. The one with Joao Felix was quite poor, and again, no one really marking Badiashile on that cross. All very poor defending. So, if I'm Chelsea, I'm shocked I didn't score more. At that point, you should have taken advantage of that and scored more just to get the confidence up. But again, I can't take all the credit away because there are times where you kind of see Chelsea get wide open for their chances and absolutely shank the shot, sky it, whatever the case may be, off the post. Kai Havertz is quite familiar with that. We've seen him do it many times in the Champions League and many times in the Premier League as well. So credits to Chelsea for actually, putting goals in the back of the net, albeit easy ones. But yeah, I think they really got bailed out on this one.
Yeah, Mac, 3 goals in 1 game for Chelsea. Does this set them up to to be high scoring in the next games, who are Man City away, Man U away, Newcastle at home to end the season? Obviously, they also have Nottingham Forest to play as well. But yeah, what were your thoughts on sort of their turnaround? Can they keep this up, or is this sort of still just an off game that we've been seeing sort of how their run has been?
So I don't mean to kind of pour cold water on the excitement of Chelsea fans in this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So in regards to the Nottingham Forest game, they have a chance to potentially win that game. For the rest of the 3 games, do I expect to see 3 big, fat, large L's? Absolutely. Let's be completely honest here. That's what I anticipate to happen. Of all people here, let's be honest here. Would I not love to see Chelsea beat Man City? Both of you would say yes. Would I not love to see Chelsea beat Man U to make the Liverpool Man U more exciting at the end of the season? Absolutely. Is it going to happen? Probably not. Let's be real here, okay? I think the positive that you can take away from Chelsea, at least in some aspect, for me, is really comes down to one player, Madueke, the right winger. I think he came over from PSV. He looked exceptional. He was aggressive on the ball, always wanting his ball to his feet, willing to take on anybody from the Bournemouth team. And it's not just this game in the Arsenal matchup as well. He played very, very well, and it was a standout player. So it looks like they have something there. It just seems like if he can focus on having a little bit of a final touch into the ball, final cross, final pass, that's something that he's able to work on. He has everything else in the locker to be a very good player down the road for this Chelsea team. And it's good to see that it's the other player that we've talked about as the biggest positive in the previous transfer window is Badiashile, scoring for Chelsea for the first time. So huge positive there. So that's really all the positives I'll take up from this Chelsea game, because on watching this game, it seemed like Bournemouth were the team with the more opportunities, with the clear opportunities to be able to score, looked like they were on the front foot. I completely understand they had very little possession in this game in comparison to Chelsea, but every time they did, they looked a threat. Whereas Chelsea very much so looked passive up until the 80th minute. So they played a great 10 minutes of football after Bournemouth made a couple of mistakes. Cool, that's great. But I don't think that's enough positives, aside from a couple of key contributions from players that are starting to make a name. So that's more so the positive I'll focus on for them, in my opinion.
Okay, and Gio we're seeing a lot of rumors about who Chelsea are looking to sign as the next manager, and the closest one or the most realistic ones that we're seeing more recently is Pochettino. Could he be the guy that brings out the best in Badiashile, Madueke, Enzo Fernandez, Mudryk, those types of players? What are your expectations for Pochettino and this Chelsea team, Gio?
If Poch does goes there, I think the first thing the first purchase he'll make, or looking to make, will be a striker. I think a lot of his success comes from, a very well-known Harry Kane, and he kind of builds around that. So, who is he going to go out and get? I don't think it's going to be Harry Kane, although Todd Bowley can dish it, because they're going to have to sell some of these guys. There's no way they're going to keep all these guys. So let's see who they can, what they can salvage in that sense and buy. But yeah, I think, he'll have the facilities to create, great lineups and play great football. I have all the confidence in him to do so. But I think one of the first things he'll be looking to do is actually buy a striker.
Interesting, Mac.
I just want to say my favorite moment from this Premier League weekend, though, was probably the Chelsea fans singing "We Are Staying Up." That was, I think, the English asceticism and kind of self-deprecation that they have shown out in that moment, and I respect Chelsea fans for that. That was absolutely hilarious. Sorry, go ahead, Ray. My apologies.
Sorry. Not only that, my favorite part was Lampard is the best caretaker manager. Kept Everton up last season, kept Chelsea up this season. Who is he going to keep up next season?
I love it.
Because obviously, but yeah, Mac.
Could very well be Bournemouth. Who knows? If you ask Scott Parker, it could very well be Bournemouth, eh? But no, it seemed like more like an off day from this Bournemouth team. Gio's been kind of, if using a gambling term, Gio, I don't mean to put that supposition on you. He's been banging the over on this Bournemouth team of how well they've been playing. So considering this performance, it seemed a little bit more of a shocker there. But their team, similar to Chelsea, are comfortably out of the relegation battle, at least now, and can kind of move on and be comfortable with the rest of the season and figure out more so what changes they want to make going into next year to see how they can continue to climb up and potentially come out from being a mid-table or lower table clubs, eh?
Well, speaking of the relegation battle, we're going to move on now to a banger of games that took place today, guys. A lot of goals to discuss, and so let's dive straight into a team down there in the relegation battle. Fulham 5, Leicester 3. Mac, you were watching this game, I believe. Give us some of your thoughts on the result and some of what happened.
So Leicester, I don't know what it is with Leicester in terms of their ability to not score penalties. I feel bad for Jamie Vardy in some ways because, to start off, to paint the picture of this game, Fulham went into this game all aggressive, played very, very well. We're on the front foot. Leicester seemed very, very poor. I do feel bad for Everson. I think that's the goalies from Leicester's name that replaced the horrendous Ward. That first goal coming in from a kind of a free kick, that cross coming out. Do I come to get it? Do I not? Tough position, but Leicester at that moment when that happens had to come up with a response, and they kind of succumb to the pressure of this Fulham team. We're still without Mitrovic for up until that Manchester United game. Is that how it is? Up until the final game of the season. So they're still in a position where they could have got something out of this game, but they were never up for it. And as soon as it went up 3-0, I think it was, Leicester finally seemed to be getting back into the game. Then went on to miss a penalty, which in those moments, in those key moments, in terms of building a comeback, building some confidence in your team to get back into the game, it was poor from Vardy to. Was it a great penalty to have that saved? Later on, they ended up getting another one, and Maddison ended up scoring it. But still, it's this team. It seems like if you look at them on paper, they have all the tools, all the ability to be able to be a much higher level team than they currently are. They're just not with it right now, and they're just not in this right now. And they've lost 21 Premier League games this season. They're most in a Premier League campaign since 94-95, in which they lost 25, and they were relegated at that point. So it very well could happen again in terms of they've sustained such heavy losses, and it's really their defense that has let them down, and that they could be potentially being relegated once again. So overall, a very poor performance from this Leicester team. The 5-3 scoreline seems that paints the picture that it was kind of a barn burner, 8-goal thriller. No, Fulham seemed to control every aspect of this game. And Leicester, even though Leicester did have the opportunities, they just couldn't get across the finish line. And you could argue, they weren't clinical enough up front, but if they weren't so porous defensively, they wouldn't have to worry so much. So it just leaves me asking so many questions about this Leicester team, and to see, I guess their only saving grace is that they're, of course, you are kind of what your record says you are in some ways, but they're playing so poorly. But the only advantage is a lot of the other teams around them are also playing so poorly. But the unfortunate part for them is that they're facing each other, so there potentially could come some winner, and Leicester doesn't have that advantage, unfortunately. So they're in a tough position. It'll be interesting to see how they play out the rest of the season.
Yeah, Jill, you were watching another game as well by a team that's similarly struggling to get out of sort of that relegation battle. Brighton 1, Everton 5 was the result. And hey, unlike Leicester, Everton really looked like they were up for it and scored well, scored early, stuck to a game plan. What are your takes on the game, Gio?
It looks like Sean Dyche might be the better, not caretaker manager, but to get Everton out of a relegation spot is big. So, no, I thought Everton, like, obviously we're gonna, even prior to getting into the game, I thought, well, not even I thought, everyone thought, Brighton was gonna come in here and, do their business on Everton. But that was definitely not the case. 5-1 Everton. I thought Everton was. No, I thought Brighton was a little too aggressive on their part. Pushing up very high. Leaving the back quite vulnerable. And Everton did a fantastic job finding seams in behind. A couple of players in particular I thought were quite outstanding this game. Was Dwight McNeil, who was everywhere on the pitch, got a touch whenever he could. On the defensive end, on the offensive end, making great runs. Decore, obviously, with 2 goals himself. But yeah, no, I thought Everton showed up and played and really showed what quality they have. And in terms of the players that they do have, I thought they did very well. So yeah, and again, I want to shout out Dwight McNeil again for that Ross Barkley-esque celebration. Definitely taking a piss there. So I hope that doesn't come back and haunt you if you ever do get relegated this season. But not so classy move, but definitely fun for a neutral to watch.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Everton, that's exactly sort of, like you said, Sean Dyche team that's executing sort of that game plan, and what a better way for those players to really stand out. Obviously, you need to hit the team on the break and have willing runners, which Decore got a couple of goals from. McNeil, a former Sean Dyche player, performing quite well as well. And a game that I think Brighton, it's fair to say, sort of underestimated, definitely, the will that Everton would have. And that brings me to a little bit of concern to sort of how Brighton's season is sort of finishing. They did get a couple of good results previous to this game, but they do have Arsenal, Newcastle, and Man City still to come before the end of the season, away at Aston Villa. Is this sort of will this tell us sort of how Brighton are, and really sort of right now they're performing quite well, which may be an outlier. Will this sort of bring them back down to where they are expected to be, and tell us really where they are?
Yes, I think the key part here, and I think what you want to get to from this game individually, is that Billy Gilmore did not start this game, so he's not at fault for this performance. I think we're going to start with that. Aside from that, if we were just move past his brilliance and unfortunately not making the starting 11, I think this is a little bit different. I think if we start the season today and the team was as it was currently constructed, I think they would be much more of a threat to finish in a European spot than they are currently right now. The reason why I personally feel that is that they were probably a little bit too far out in terms of points total to make the kind of quote unquote top 5, being in and a range for kind of a guaranteed Europa spot. And the kind of, I think this might be a little bit unfair, but the eyesight's kind of looking, the vultures flying around right now to be able to kind of pillage some of these players has become much more aggressive recently. A lot of reports of Liverpool have now moved on from the Jude Bellingham signing to now focus 100% on McAllister. Talks of Casado leaving has been consistent. Batoma's been in the talk. So there's a lot of their key players may potentially have their focus lie elsewhere because there isn't as much to play for given the points gap between them and Liverpool or them and Manchester United currently. So Is there as much to play for the rest of the season for some of these players? No, and that's probably why I wouldn't be surprised, compounded with how difficult the fixtures are, that it's going to come across as a very negative end to the season, with both those factors kind of joining in together. But I do think it's a great spot where they can be looking a little bit shaky, like you said, given those fixtures and now the expectations that we do have for them, are they really able to meet them?
Yeah, so definitely we'll keep an eye out for how Brighton fare in the next or their last couple of games. But lastly, Nottingham Forest, Southampton gave us a 7-goal thriller, I guess you can say. Definitely a lot of action in this game. Nottingham Forest was always sort of on the front foot going ahead, and then Southampton would pull them back, and then Nottingham Forest will score again, and then Southampton will try to come back again. And it was a lot of back and forth, which is really the story of the season for these two teams, guys. Southampton definitely pretty much guaranteed that they're going down with this another loss, but Nottingham Forest, again, still shaky at the back at times, conceding from all types of goals, set pieces, a penalty, and a well-worked goal by Southampton. But on the flip side, they do have a quite dynamic front three in Awoniyi, Gibbs-White, and Brennan Johnson. Those two guys look like they are linking up quite well. So if Nottingham Forest can stay up, I'm sure that they'll be looking to build up around these two guys. But overall, yeah, a tale of two teams that are struggling, can't really defend for important periods of the game, leak goals here and there, but can still put some goals in. Obviously, in this level of competition, you have to be able to score to be in the Premier League. So not, I think, a lot that we can learn from here, but definitely a lot of action for us to see. So I guess for this part, we're going to take a last break here, guys, and then we'll be back previewing the semi-final Champions League matchups coming up. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to finish off the podcast with the big games coming up midweek, the UEFA Champions League semifinals, and the big one, obviously, Real Madrid against Man City. And just to preface it, guys, I'm going to have to say something that you guys might find outrageous. Real Madrid, Man City, given sort of the history between these two clubs, history in the competition, and sort of what happened last year, I think Real Madrid should come into this game as favorites. Now, you might disagree because obviously the run of form that Man City have been in at times look like the best team in Europe, which to give them credit, they very much could be, but Real Madrid are in this competition winners, obviously holders of the title from last year, and beat Man City as well in the competition last year to get to the finals. Very much, it should be Real Madrid. They have the know-how. They have the pedigree in this competition, and regardless of sort of what happens in terms of form going into this game, you should be looking at it hey, can we sort of expect them to get a result? It's not really a league match per se. It's a 2-game sort of essentially a championship matchup, 2 games back and forth, and then winner goes through to the finals. So I personally think Real should be looked at as favorites. Mac, I'm sure you'll disagree based on form, but just my hot take here. I don't really think, if you look at it history-wise, Real Madrid should be looking at themselves as underdogs. Mac?
I completely and utterly disagree. I understand where you're coming from in terms of pedigree of the competition. I think if we're just basing and starting the conversation around that aspect, it's not unfair to say that, okay, which team has more pedigree and has an understanding of playing well in cup football? Real Madrid, 100%, because of course they've won it more than anybody else. This is kind of their bread and butter. I know Gio is going to come in. He nearly dropped his headphones and had a heart attack when Ray said that. This is God's favorite team, This is what it is. This is meant to be.
Why'd you take my line?
I say that. I'm trying to save you the breath because I care about you and want to make sure you have enough oxygen to pick up your headphones from your surprise. The reason why this is a little bit different. I think if you take away last year, if you look at last year's result, I think the major difference, and I think the matchup for Real Madrid where they have to win and they won last year, was the Vinicius versus Fernandinho matchup. Fernandinho is not here anymore. That matchup is utterly different. It'll be very interesting to see how well that matchup plays in this game and this 2 legs, because that was probably I would argue, the reason why they won, but because of the disparity of level between kind of a walking mummified corpse and a young athletic footballer, right, who was starting to build up to the top of his form, who's even excelled further in this season. I think in this individual matchup, if Real Madrid do not win this game, I think by at least 2 goals, we can count them out in the second leg, to be completely honest, because this Man City team have been utterly dominant at home, consistently in the Champions League, and I've walked through most of their away fixtures, something I've brought up a lot of times on the podcast, where they feel comfortable. Hey, we'll slap most teams 3 or 4 goals at home. And is Real Madrid that much of a different team on form? Some of the other teams that Man City have played thus far this year, I would argue not. As well as, I think, something that's been forgot about a lot because of his, let's say, poor run of form in the Champions League with Pep Guardiola. He's one of the few managers to have a consistent winning record against Real Madrid. He's only lost 5 of his 21 matches against Real Madrid, which is, I guess, if any manager is above 500, you got to look at them in a different light. So he's done very, very well. I think he could be a key here, understanding how they play. Playing away at the Bernabeu, I think, is a key thing for them, is that even if they come away with a tie, Man City will feel comfortable. So I think the pressure from the jump is on Real Madrid to come out and play. The odds makers have this matchup, I think, 44% chance of Man City winning to a 29% chance of Real Madrid with a 27% chance of, a draw. That's how they currently have it lined up. I think that's fair. Odds on Man City should win this game, should win this tie. But if Real Madrid have a shout, they have to dominate this first fixture.
Joe, we know Real Madrid, winners of the Copa del Rey in the weekend, 2-1 win against Osasuna. Does that game have any effect on sort of Real Madrid's approach to this semifinal matchup, or do you think obviously Ancelotti is going to have his guys ready and ready to go for this game? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Hey, listen, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's not that I fully agree with you, but I think, yeah, they've done it. They don't really have a care for. Not that they don't have a care, but their focus isn't on La Liga anymore. They know they're not going to win the title there. And what do they do best? Win titles. So where else can they win a title now? Is the Champions League. I think realistically, obviously we understand how great Man City is. We understand, how cohesive that team is. But when it comes to this competition, it's hard to argue Real Madrid. But I will argue this. I think the Man City defense is going to have a lot of trouble. I think there's going to be a lot of goals this game. But Real Madrid is going to sort of almost go at the City defense whenever they get the chance. Rodrigo, Vinny, of course, Benzema, they've been playing very fluid football up front, and I think it's going to be actually a much tougher game for Man City's defense than we're all expecting, just because of how dominant they have been in the Prem. I think this is going to be a completely different game. Expect a lot of goals both ways. Real Madrid's defense isn't great. We know that. The game where I forgot who they played. They let a guy score 4 goals, and that was not pretty at all. This is all in the league. So, again, expect a goal fest, but I don't think we should count Real Madrid out too soon.
Yeah, it's a two game tie, and as Mac mentioned, this is a must win for Madrid because obviously City will be looking and targeting that home reverse fixture to sort of seal the way. Mac?
I'm sorry to jump in, and what I wanted to just be able to ask and see how you guys feel, because Real Madrid did much more so take kind of a break setting going into this game, whereas Man City didn't. Erling Haaland played a full 90 minutes. Kevin De Bruyne played a full 90 minutes, which was very shocking in my opinion. I thought that they would have come off. There would have been more rotation there. As well as Kyle Walker did start. This was my apologies. Kyle Walker didn't start. I apologize. In the previous matchup, do we think, similar to Arsenal, we see him coming back in to be able to, because he was the injury of why Fernandinho played last year in this matchup. is he an automatic shoo-in to be able to play against Vinicius? Similar to what Man City played against Arsenal to kind of drag back Martinelli defensively? What are you guys' thoughts about that?
I think because Man City expect to be dominating the ball a lot more, they might stick with sort of the back three that they had with Akanji, Diaz, and I think it was Ake that played, and then Stones in the middle with Rodri. That I think the same game plan will go into this game. If in the second half they see that obviously is the main sort of offense for Real Madrid, they may make a switch there, but I think they likely will start that back three. What about you, Gio?
I don't think they should change anything. No team should change anything. I think they're looking too much into it. If they decide to change anything, I think Real Madrid obviously each team knows their strengths, but I don't think they should take away from their each. They shouldn't take away from their own strengths just to try to match up well. I think they should just play their game, understand the competition, but obviously not commit too strong too early, and make sure they still play a sound match on both ends of the pitch.
Another matchup that I'm kind of interested to see is if Camavinga will start as a left back and what role he will have on sort of man marking Bernardo Silva, because obviously, as we know, Bernardo Silva likes to drop in and do all his work in midfield, but also can stay out wide to sort of be an outlet for City if they ever need that. And Camavinga, we know he's not a wing back, but he has the versatility to drop into that spot, be solid one-on-one. I don't think necessarily Bernardo Silva will beat him with pace, but I think that'll just be a great tactical matchup to see who is sort of quicker to the ball, who is smarter in terms of negating each other's offensive threat. And again, a very fascinating matchup all around, and very much looking forward to that. But just before we wrap up the podcast, Gio, another semifinal matchup to take place with the Milan derby. AC Milan are home on paper, but they are facing Inter Milan, who, did well to get through to this. Both teams did well to get through to this stage, but really, who do you have on the runner-up for this year's Champions League?
I have AC Milan, and that's only if Leao plays. If Leao, for whatever reason, isn't fully healthy and doesn't play, I don't think Milan wins. I think the key to their victory and their advancement in the tournament will come down to Rafael Leao's presence in the game.
Very interesting. I think both teams got 2-0 wins over the weekend against their respective matches that they played. But that's a great point. Big threat for AC Milan with Leao on that left-hand side. Mac, do you give Inter any chance? If they do, what will sort of their best approach be to get a win in this game?
I personally feel like Inter are. I would go based off form of how these two teams have matched up. I would go Inter as the favorites, in my opinion. Because they won the previous two matchups. They've played across thus far the season 3 different times. Milan won in the first one 3-2, and then Inter AC winning the first one 3-2, and then Inter Milan winning the previous two matchups. So based off that form, I think I'm going to kind of edge it out to them there. I think the reason why, and I think you're spot on there, is because they've done a decent job at handling the threat of Leao, and that's really kind of the straw that stirs the AC drink. If he's not able to play well, I very much see the struggle with them playing well enough offensively. It's a great amount of opportunities to be able to get on the board versus Inter Milan have enough, in my opinion, offensive options and flexibility with players coming in late into the box, a la Barella, Gio's favorite player, coming late in with a little bit of Energizer Bunny to see if he can be able to make a difference. I think they have more threats. And personally, I'll be honest with you, this may be a little bit selfish. I don't want to see Giroud get further in any more of these competitions. I'm tired of this. So that's more. That's, if I'm being biased, that's more so the reason why I want to see Inter play well.
Hey, very similar to how you don't want Giroud to proceed and get more sort of accolades to his name. Gio, I know you'll be happy to hear that a Spurs player on loan at Napoli did get a winner's medal. I think Ndombele did get a league win to his name, with obviously Napoli's securing that Serie A title this year. But hey, a lot to play for. You guys made it very interesting. It could be very, very close. Gio?
I just want to comment on that Ndombele thing. Hopefully Ndombele goes back to Tottenham, tells them how great the feeling is, and all the players leave. So there you go.
Hey, definitely something to keep an eye out for how that situation works out. But obviously, what we'll keep an eye out for in our next podcast, we'll be reviewing these two Champions League matches. But this concludes our podcast for today, guys. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Next time you hear from us will be Thursday when we review the Champions League semifinal matches that we just previewed, and we'll also preview the weekend's upcoming Premier League matches. Mac, thank you for coming back, and thank you for joining us.
Gio, I got you, so you don't have to worry. Hala Madrid? Is that what you say? Is that how you pronounce it?
Oh, you got it. You got it.
And Gio, care to give us your thoughts?
God's favorite team, baby.
Hala Madrid. See you guys soon.